Hey everyone, I hope you're having a wonderful day so far. This video for today is going to be going through stretches for your upper body and your lower body specific to someone who may have a hemiparesis or a side that's significantly weaker and tighter than the other. So this would be a great video for someone recovering from a stroke, someone that may have MS, or someone that maybe have a spinal cord injury or brain injury where you're really having that hemiparesis side that's really tight. So the only thing you'll need for today's class is just a nice firm chair and a lot of open space to move. So let's go ahead and get into it. Proper positioning on this chair. And first and foremost, the chair that you're using should have a really solid base of support. As you can see, the chair I'm using here has nice like 4 legs that are nice and firmly planted on the ground. If it's a rocker, that would potentially tip you forward. If you're doing this in a wheelchair, make sure all of those brakes are all locked up. And that's all you'll need. So we want to start on the front edge of that seat, right? We don't want to be leaning too far back. And for all of these exercises, no backs resting against the back of the chair yet. One of the stretches we will be doing that, but you want to maintain a nice upright torso posture and positioning, because that really helps us engage in those core muscles and helps us get deeper into some of these stretches. Okay, the first one is going to be just a floor to ceiling reach. So what I want you to do is take your feet about shoulder width apart, get that posture up nice and tall, actually a little wider than shoulder width. And what I like to do, if you're using a chair, you can kind of look at the legs of the chair, and you want your feet to be about as wide as those, maybe even slightly wider. You're going to feel a pretty good stretch on the inner thighs in the groin area while you go through this stretch. But we really want to open up those hips, because the hips get really tight if you're walking around, or even if you're seated more. The hip flexors and your hip adductors get very tight the more you sit, or if you're walking with a somewhat of an abnormal gait pattern, those muscles will get really tight. So really important, keep those hips opened up. A lot of our stretches will be incorporating that. So with the hands, I want you to take, if you do have a hemiparesis, you can't open up that hand all the way, or you have a tough time achieving full range of motion all the way up overhead or out to the side, you're going to use that non-hemiparetic side to assist with these ranges of motion. All right. So for today, I'm going to pretend my left side is impacted. So I'm going to use my right hand to guide the left. So I'm going to take my right hand, and you're going to be placing that hand right over the wrist, kind of right below the palm of your hand there, and having a nice solid grip. All right. And what we want to do with this stretch is to try to get as much length through those arms as we can. So we don't want to have a bend in the elbows. We want both of those elbows to be as straight as possible. If that's hard to accomplish, okay, a couple things that might help. Deep inhaling, exhaling breaths will always help relax those muscles. That goes for all of these stretches. And for everyone, if you have some hemiparesis or some spasticity and tone, a lot of times the harder you work, the less you breathe and the more tense those muscles get, right? So what's really important throughout this video is to really focus on slow, relaxing, calming breaths as you hold all of these positions. You may feel like it's a really intense stretch, but just try to breathe through it as much as you can. If it's too intense, back off of some of that range of motion so you can maintain a more natural breath. All right. So posture's up nice and tall. My right hand is over my left wrist. I'm going to take a big deep breath in and exhale, reaching down toward the floor. My eyes follow the hands all the way down toward the floor. And we're going to hold that position for 2 deep breaths. In through the nose, out through the mouth. One more time. In through the nose and out through the mouth. Let's come back up nice and tall, nice and slow. A lot of times when you speed through any of these motions, if you go quickly, that'll also increase some of that tone and spasticity. So slow and controlled motions throughout all of these stretches is what you want to maintain. Now we're going to raise up and overhead. If reaching up and overhead kind of pinches or impinges on some of that shoulder to shoulder pain, you're just not able to get up as high, just go with as much range of motion as you can accomplish. And the goal would be to repeat these exercises over and over again to make sure that you can increase that range of motion or that active strength. Because even stretching like this with that hemiparetic side is actually going to help build strength there along with accomplishing more range of motion. So sitting up tall, we're going to take a big deep breath in, and as you breathe in, you're going to raise those arms up. So inhale up as high as you can and try to hold there for one deep breath. Relax those shoulders, bring those arms back down. So now I want you to inhale on the way up, exhale on the way down. Okay, we're going to inhale and go up and exhale, coming down. Okay, eyes follow the hands in every motion, all the way up and down. Let's do that one more time. One more time, all the way up and down. Very nice. Okay. Relax those arms a little bit. Now we're going to put both of those movements together. So we're going to hold each position for 3 deep breaths. And again, the more you breathe with every exhale breath, your goal is to get a little bit farther into that stretch going down or a little bit higher as you go up. So the motion is going to be this, all the way down and sweeping those arms out, keeping those elbows straight, all the way up above your head. Okay, or even out to the chest if overhead is too hard. All right, we're going to do this 3 times. 3 deep breaths down, 3 deep breaths up. Ready? And go. Exhale as you go down and hold that 3 deep breaths. If your breaths are fast or a little shallow, that's okay. But try to make those breaths as long as you can and as equal as you can. So just as much air is coming in as is going out. Now we're going to raise up, keeping those arms straight, slow and steady, all the way up as high as you can. As soon as you get as high as you can, you're going to hold that position. 3 deep breaths. Try not to shrug your shoulders as you do this. Keep those shoulders relaxed, just extending the arms. That's repetition number 1. We're going back down. So again, this is a great stretch. You might feel a little more release in your lower back. Great stretch for the arms. Great stretch for the hips. Remember, holding here 3 deep breaths. In through the nose and out through the mouth. When we started, I couldn't get my hands all the way down to the floor. Now I can. You might notice the same thing. Kind of find those markers to see how far down your leg can you get those arms. Goal being to get a little bit lower each time. Let's come all the way up, slow and steady. 3 deep breaths. One more time. If your breaths are not quite as long as mine, try to hold that stretch as long as I do, even if it's more than 3 deep breaths. Okay? The goal being to breathe slower, longer, okay, and fewer breaths. One more time, all the way down toward the floor. Holding it, 3 deep breaths. And let's go up nice and tall. Nice job. Last hold in this position here. On this one, you can go maybe a little side to side reach if you want to. You might feel that opening up the backside of your shoulder blades a little bit more as you hold that stretch. Again, nothing fast, always in control, always pairing it with a breath. And relax those arms back down. Very good. So as I mentioned, every repetition that you do here, these are range of motion exercises to help kind of manage tone and spasticity and range of motion of that hemiparetic side. But it's also strengthening that side anytime you go through any of these motions. Okay, it's going to help strengthen up that muscle and that side of the body that needs a little bit more attention. Now this one is going to be somewhat similar, but we're going through more trunk rotation. So a lot of times when you're walking or when you're getting on a bed, sometimes rolling to one side is not as easy as rolling to the other. So this is going to work on some of that trunk rotation and mobility while in a very more controlled position, in a seated position. So we want both feet firmly on the ground, bring your feet in a little bit closer than they were on that last stretch. Same hand positioning. So I'm going to take my stronger hand, or the non-hemiparetic side, over that arm that needs a little bit of assistance. Okay. Now, I'm going to reach to my left side, extending those arms again. So those arms are probably a little more stretched out now, but let's reach and extend both arms over and across your left knee. All right. So you're going to reach down and pick something up over off that left side. Okay. What I want you to do is kind of glide those arms, leaning forward, glide those arms down on your left thigh. Okay. So you feel that right shoulder dipping and rotating a little bit, right? If you look over that left shoulder, you might feel a little bit more of a stretch. All right. So that's going to open up that right shoulder blade, work on a little trunk rotation. And then from there, you're going to come up, bring those hands to the chest, and you're pressing away over to the left side, or over to your right side. Okay, so that's the motion here. We're not holding this one quite as long. You're coming down and to the left. Hold that for at least one deep breath. Bring those hands back up to the chest. And then we're pressing away to the right, all the way over to the right. And again, your eyes follow those hands. Hold it there. And then back down and to the left. Again, you're trying to reach a little bit farther. You kind of gauge that by how far your right arm is getting down on your left leg as you're holding that stretch. Kind of the farther down that arm gets and the elbow goes, the more rotation you have through your torso. Let's come back up, bringing those arms to the chest, and we're pressing away. All right. Very nice. Now, we're going to do the same thing to the other side. All right, you're going to feel a lot more intense of the stretch on that left arm now as we reach across to the right side. And with all of these exercises, if you're feeling one side being tighter than the other, really focus on that side that's a little bit more tight. You're going to want to spend more time stretching that side out because that muscle is working harder and it's tighter. The more stretching, the more range of motion you do on it, the more active mobility you're going to have. Now, let's reach the hands over to the right leg, across that right thigh, and now I'm going to glide that left arm down my left thigh, or my right thigh. Left arm glides across on the right thigh, looking to the right, looking over that right shoulder. Let's slowly come back up, sit up nice and tall in your chair, bring the arms to the chest, and now you're pressing away to the left. Both arms reaching over to the left. Okay, let's bring the arms back in, and we're going back over to the right side. Try to get that left arm down to your right thigh. Hold it in that position. Look over that right shoulder. Bring the hands back up to the chest, sitting up tall before you go to the other side. Okay. These are great stretches for everyone to do as well, right? A lot of trunk rotation, a lot of trunk mobility. Helps you do things like get in and out of the car easier, get dressed a little bit easier, roll out of bed a little bit easier. One more time, coming up, the hands all the way down, across that right thigh, looking over that right shoulder. And let's sit up nice and tall. Bring the hands to the chest, and we're pressing away over to the left side. Very nice. All right. The next one, we're going to move to the lower body. Last two, we're going to a lower body stretch. Same positioning in the chair. It's going to be a hamstring stretch. So a lot of times when you're going to take a step, that leg might not extend out all the way as you go to take a step, right? It might be more of like a shorter, choppy step. But what tends to happen is that hamstring muscle stays contracted. It stays bent like this. So we got to make sure we stretch out the muscle on the back side of your leg, which is your hamstring, to ensure or try to help accomplish a bigger stride length and leg extension as you go to step. All right. So that's the goal of this stretch. Sitting up in your chair, you're going to extend one leg out in front of you. Right. So you want that leg to be as straight as possible. I'll turn my chair here so you can see me. I'm going to extend my left leg first. Okay. And that leg needs to be as straight as you can get it. A lot of times that knee will stay bent. If you can't do the stretch without bending the knee, start there. But the goal is to get that leg a little bit straighter with more repetition. Okay. While we do this, what I want you to do is take that hemiparetic hand. Okay. We might as well get two birds with one stone here. I'm saying my left hand is that weaker, more hemiparetic hand. Use that hand to open up the fingers if you can, if you need to. Place it on your right thigh. So your fingertips, your palm is in toward, on the inside of your right leg. Okay. And what you're going to do is use the other hand right on top of it as just a little bit of a stretch. Because as you lean forward, you're actually going to be stretching some of these muscles in the forearm while you stretch the hamstring. Okay. So again, left hand inside of the right thigh. Left leg is extended, and we're slightly leaning forward in that chair. Okay, keeping that back nice and flat. Pretend like you're pushing your nose down towards your toes, and you're just making sure that left hand stays opened up on the thigh. It helps stretch out the underside of your forearm. Hold that for 2 more deep breaths. Every exhale, trying to get a little bit lower forward into that stretch. So you feel it on the back side of your leg. Very good. Let's go to the other side. Okay. So I'm going to extend my right leg. The right leg is straight out as far as it can go. The weight is on the heel of that right leg. All right. If you have an AFO on, that helps keep that foot nice and straight. It'll actually help you get a little bit of a deeper stretch. I'm again going to stretch out my left hand over the hemiparetic side or the weaker side, the tighter side. Okay. I'm putting my left hand on my left thigh. And I'm going to take my right hand and just brace it over the left as I lean forward and hold that stretch. Okay. We do have some videos on here for fine motor dexterity exercises. We'll be adding more as well. So if you want more stretches for the hands themselves, look for those videos in the on-demand library. And also let us know what we can be adding to these videos to help you more. Let's take one more deep breath with this stretch. And come back up, nice and tall. All right. Last and final stretch is going to be stretching out the front side of the hip flexors. Much like the hamstrings, okay, the hip flexors can get really tight as well, especially if you find yourself sitting more in a chair. It's hard for you to get up and walk more independently, so you might be sitting in a wheelchair or at home just sitting more than you used to. The hip flexors and the hamstrings get tight because they stay bent, right? When you're up and walking around, these joints are typically more extended through your hip and through the back of your knee. So That's why these muscles get pretty tight. That's why it's really important to stretch them out. This stretch is a little bit more involved. It can be done off of a couch where you have a little bit more space if this is hard to do, or off the side of the bed. But I'm going to show you today how to do it from a chair. So again, you want a nice firm chair. We're going to scoot your hips all the way over to the far left side of the chair. So that left leg is almost kind of off the edge of that chair, okay? You never want to risk balance or stability, so if you feel unsteady with this, just try to find a way to get into some stretch that is similar to this, and then maybe some practice will help learn this motion a little better. This is by far one of the more difficult stretches to get into, but really, really, really beneficial. The higher the surface or the chair or the bed, the easier it's going to be to get into this stretch, okay? So I'm going to use my left hand, or if my left hand is my hemi, I'm going to use that right arm or my leg to help kind of scoot that left leg back on the outside of the chair legs, right? You don't want that foot tucked underneath the chair. You want it outside the chair legs. Scoot forward on the edge of that chair as much as you can. And from here, I want you to lean back. The only time I want you to lean back into that chair. And you should really feel a nice stretch. Front of the knee, maybe some inner thigh up through your hip. Okay, the farther forward you are with this stretch, the more you're going to feel it. Okay, the farther this foot is back behind you and tucked under, the more you're going to feel it as well. All right, so looking up toward the ceiling, let's hold that stretch. 2 more deep breaths. And right here is where you want to feel, right on the front side of that hip. Let's come back up, nice and tall. We're going to switch it over to the other side. Okay. So typically, if a stroke or your MS or the brain injury or the spinal cord injury affected your left side more than your right, chances are you're going to be using the right side more than you do the left side. So then the right leg tends to get a little bit tighter. It remains to be a little bit tighter just because those muscles are being used a little bit more. Really important to stretch this side out. Again, you're tucking that right foot on the outside of the chair, underneath. And then from there, you're going to lean back. For me, that's a very intense stretch. One I should do more often, as we all should. These are stretches that you guys can do every single day. So we'll add more stretching videos. There are a lot more stretching videos outside of this one that are going to be beneficial for you. But we always recommend to maintain a range of motion routine every day, especially if your muscles are really, really tight. The more mobile your joints and your muscles are, the easier time you have building strength, building balance, regaining the ability to walk. Super, super, super important. Let's come back up, nice and tall. That is our stretching exercise workout for today. If some of those stretches you want to go back and repeat because you really felt them, you really feel like you need to address those more than some of the others, by all means, go back through it, know where they are, and we can walk you through it. Otherwise, go back and do them on your own. Thank you very much for joining us. Have a wonderful day. Keep moving strong.